Well, Secretary Carson, it's great to have you back on American Thought Leaders.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So, last time we spoke, it was about 4 months ago. We were talking about a range of areas that you guys were digging into, opportunity zones, affordable housing. Before I jump into maybe an update around those things, let's talk about your overall philosophy. You described it to me as a philosophy of empowering Americans to be more self-sufficient in the HUD context. Tell me a little more about how that's been going.
The reason, obviously, that that's so important is because, we have to compete with the rest of the world. We have to compete with China and India that have 4 times as more people as we do. And if we continue to be complacent with just keeping people in a program or keeping people under roof, we're not going to be able to compete with them in the future. So that's why it's so important that we develop people, that we get people to a point of self-sufficiency, and recognize that every one of those individuals is someone who could maybe discover a new energy source or a cure for some disease. And we do ourselves a distinct disfavor when we don't spend the necessary time dealing with their empowerment.
So what are the kind of key initiatives, would you say, in HUD right now that help, that are using this philosophy?
Well, one of the key things we're doing right now is we're rewriting the rules for Section 3, which says if you're getting HUD money, you have an obligation to train, hire, or provide contracts to low-income people in the area that's being served.
Okay.
And it hasn't been used a lot, even though it's been on the books for a long time, because it's onerous, the reporting requirements and all of these things.
I see.
And that's why we're revamping that and incentivizing people to use that. We've also had a number of our Envision centers open since we talked to you last. And Envision centers are there really to help people be able to take advantage of a lot of the things that already exist.
Okay.
But if it exists but you don't know about it, it's not very helpful to you.
I see.
And it's sort of the wraparound services, similar to what we do with the HUD VASH program. We just give people housing; it doesn't help. But if we give the veterans housing and the wraparound services, a significant number of them are able to advance to self-sufficiency.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit about some of the successes around affordable housing. I've been reading a bit about that.
Well, just about 3 to 4 weeks ago, we had a display on the National Mall about affordable housing, a housing showcase. And it shows you that innovation in America when it comes to housing is far from dead. It's, the things that we saw there, the manufactured housing, for instance, a lot of times people think about trailers and double wides, way beyond that. These things look better than site-built housing, and the cost is, a half to 2/3. And they're also extremely resilient. I visited Alabama after the tornadoes down there. The site-built homes, gone. The manufactured homes, standing solid, because they're bolted down to cement foundations. They're not going anywhere. So they also accumulate value according to FHFA housing index at the same rate as a site-built home. So this provides an opportunity for a lot of millennials and first-time homebuyers to actually get into a home and begin to accumulate, some equity, and then be able to take the next step. Because what we're finding is it's taking longer and longer for people to get their first home. It used to be in your early to mid-20s, and then your late 20s, then your early 30s. Now it's age 38 on average. This is the wrong direction. We have to change those kinds of trends. So working on the innovation front, but also recognizing that even though you have these wonderful innovations, in a lot of places they can't be used because of the zoning restrictions and because of the regulatory barriers. So we're making progress with that and talking to the state and the localities about removing the ones that are unnecessary. In a lot of cases, they've just accumulated one over the other. Instead of replacing regulations, they just add them on to each other. And that's what's made it so difficult. And a lot of them are irrelevant anymore. You know, for instance, you know, if you want to repurpose a house that an elderly couple owns, and they don't need all that space anymore, so you repurpose it so that you can have another family there. In many states, you can't do that because of the regulations that say people living in the house must be related to the owner. Why are those there? Because people used to be concerned about brothels popping up.
Okay.
Well, nobody's concerned about brothels anymore. So, you know, those are the kinds of things that can be removed. And you do see some progress, like in Seattle. You know, they recently come up with the block program,
okay,
which means you put tiny homes on each residential block. People weren't too enthusiastic about that, as you might imagine, until they started putting them there and say, wow, these are cute. I want one in my backyard. And, you know, Garcetti in Los Angeles recently said relax some of the restrictions against accessory dwelling units. Those are the kind of things that will help. We still have a long way to go, but we're starting down that pathway now. I think it will make a difference.
Oh, fantastic. And tell me a little bit more about opportunity zones. That was something we also were talking about, you know, the beginnings of 4 months ago.
Yeah, opportunity zones are really taking root now. I was yesterday in Salt Lake City at the HUD, which is a new multi-family development that's being built with a particular emphasis on people with autism spectrum disorders and training for them. And it also has retail on the first floor. And that project was able to be completed based on funding received through an opportunity fund. And it was created, obviously, as a part of the Tax Cut and Job Act of 2017 so that people can invest unrealized capital gains and gain significant tax advantages in doing so. But one of the other things that we've noted is that the property values in opportunity zones are going up at about twice the rate of non-opportunity zones. And who owns that property? Some of those 35 million people who live in opportunity zones who have been economically disadvantaged. Well, now, just to the designation of their area, they're able to have some benefit. A lot of times, you know, people don't talk about that. They just say, yeah, poor people aren't getting anything out of these things, and they are. You know, their 401ks and retirement programs are going up. A lot of good things happening. Job opportunities are there. The compensation is going up, particularly for blue-collar jobs. So, you know, I would love it if people, particularly in the political arena, would just say, what are our problems and how do we solve them, rather than who gets the credit for this and you did this, I did this. You know, well, it's just like third graders, apologies to third graders, you know, for, you know, this kind of stuff that they do.
Well, so, you know, you were talking last year about, earlier this year about American citizens getting priority in housing over illegal immigrants. How is that process going? And there's also this recent executive order that the president, on a related note, that the president enacted for all the agencies to basically submit information around citizenship. So is HUD ready to do this?
You know, it seems to me very strange that there's a controversy about us wanting to know who's in our country. I don't understand it. I mean, people have been wanting to know that since the days of Joseph and Mary, you know, going to Bethlehem for the census. Give me a break. But, you know, we'll do what needs to be done, you know, in terms of preference for Americans. That's common sense. You know, when you get on an airplane, you know, they say if there's a disaster, the oxygen mask, drop down, put yours on first, and then help your neighbor. Obviously, you need to do that. But, you know, in terms of the qualified citizens ruling, people need to recognize that Section 418 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1980 says that the Secretary of HUD may not provide housing assistance to people who are here illegally. It further states that if the Secretary becomes aware of people who are here legally, who are sheltering people who are not here legally, you may not provide aid for them either. So, you know, recognizing that we don't want to break the law, what we did do is provide a 6-month delay that people can request, and that can be renewed twice, so that's 18 months, which, if you think about it, is plenty of time for Congress to do their job and to fix these kinds of issues rather than asking the agencies to break the law.
It's a really good example of why the question of why citizenship is so important in the HUD context.
Exactly.
With respect to providing this data, are you already working on that for the President?
Yes, we are. We immediately started working on that, and we do have some important data, and combined with the other agencies should be able to gather a significant amount of information.
Fantastic. I also, before we finish up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the issue of homelessness. I know this is something that's really important to you. I also talked with actually Secretary Wilkie recently about this, and I know that he told me there's still, even though it's been going down, about 40,000 veterans a day on the street.
Yes.
How has HUD been working on this homelessness issue?
Well, first of all, recognize that since 2010, the number of homeless vets has gone down by almost 50%.
Yeah.
And just last year, it went down by 5.4%. Oh. So we are making significant progress. But there are 73 jurisdictions around the country that have been able to declare an effective end to veterans' homelessness, and 3 states, with another 4th state coming online very soon to be able to do that. So good progress there. But the thing that has helped the most is being able to engage in public-private partnerships to create the kinds of housing situations that will allow us to take care of our veterans, which I think is incredibly important, because we have 1% of our population that defends the other 99%, makes it possible for us to live in freedom. The least that we can do is make sure that we take care of them. And we're learning more about that because even if you're not in combat as a veteran, if you're on the field and artillery around you is being fired, the percussion effects can impact your brain.
Right.
And we're finding that a lot of the veterans have the same kind of changes as football players have. And that's why when they come back, people say, wow, they're different than they were before. And a lot of that is just us reaching out, understanding what's going on, giving them the helping hand that they need in order to be able to prosper in our society.
Secretary Carson, that's a great place to finish up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.